Gender is a key social stratifier of how women and men experience life. So gender determines the way they will be socialized, the way they are raised, the opportunities they will access in life, such as education, such as access to healthcare, such as business, such as ownership of land, and it determines power relations. So these power relations determined by gender then also determine how people exist together. So when we conduct research without paying attention to gender, it becomes a challenge because for women, gender is the nucleus of the whole feminine experience. We are also paying attention to how gender structures men's lives in issues like war, in issues like conflict, aspects to do with violence, and to do with crime. So gender is very important in research because of that.
All around the world, women are having university degrees at the postgraduate level, but less than 30% of the global researchers are women. In Africa, of the 97 top-ranked universities, only 21% have women as chancellors, while only 26% have women as registrars.
Something needs to be done. We need to start a conversation on how to bring more women into research.
The gender gaps in STEM really are shaped by gender norms. They are shaped by the biases, the cultures, the stereotypes.
The law faculty in Tanzania has existed since 1961, since independence. Until today, have never had a woman professor of law.
As women who want to pursue our careers, we experience a lot of setbacks in terms of societal norms and cultural issues along the way in your career as a wife, as a mother, and all that. How do you navigate through?
Where I'd like us to begin is breaking the glass ceiling.
Speak up no matter what it takes. And here maybe we need to know that even when we are talking about glass ceiling, that's not the only challenge women face. They also suffer from sticky floors. So while you're struggling to heat up, there are also those who are struggling to keep you down. So we have to navigate both the glass ceiling and sticky floors.
I think we need to think about not only how we sacrifice, but also how we create more structural solutions for removing that glass ceiling so that there's access for women.
Everything you have ever wanted is sitting on the other side of fear. Therefore, we need a fearless team of women researchers. You need to be the best, to continue to be the best, to continue to be able to write, to continue to be able to lead the research.
Basically, academic publishing, we know it's not gender neutral, but if you persevere, you're going to produce quality work compared to your male colleagues, because you've been put through strict requirements and you've met them.
Chatham House approached me to attend a meeting around women and elections. And when I asked one of the organizers, how did you get to know me? Said, well, you've written in this area. Our online presence, having those applications does work.
If we do not demand rewards, recognition, and remuneration, then I think we're tying ourselves into that trap that has told us for long that we don't deserve to be rewarded.
Gender issues, they live with us. They're with us in society. How do we tease them out? We integrate gender in the research content, in the research process, and in the research outcomes. You may not be able to engender the underground water system of the River Nile Basin, but you can engender how people live around the River Nile. It has to be a thought process from the very beginning.
Research should reflect reality, and reality is that we are half-half in the world, and therefore should also be reflected in the research.
For a long time, we've had different challenges, either challenges of development, challenges of health, education, etc. But we've always had external influence, external advice. This is your problem, this is the solution. And we have reached a place now where it is important and in fact imperative for us to have homegrown solutions to Africa's problems. And who is in the business of creating homegrown solutions if not African researchers, specifically women researchers, because they tend to focus on solutions to problems where it can actually make a difference.
Don't be selfish, share your knowledge, mentor others, and then, we shall have more women in research. But if you're mentoring men and not mentoring women, then I think we are in trouble.
For me to be here as media, it was eye-opening, and we need more of us here. And as women, we have to work together. So we need direct partnerships with the reporters, with the women in that field, so that your voices are heard.
We are happy that we know the challenges. So the problem is half solved.
Thank you very much for that video, and welcome everybody. Welcome to all of you who have made time to come and be a part of this conversation today. We truly appreciate the fact that you set aside time out of your busy schedules to be with us today. As was communicated to all of you when you were being invited to this platform, we are having a virtual dialogue to discuss and dialogue on the possibility of having more women in research. A conversation that is coming after very many other conversations and consultations that have been done in the course of this year. Under the Together for Impact Partnership, a partnership between the NIDA Fellowship Center and the MS Training Center for Development Cooperation, we have been able to carry out a number of activities towards the development of this More Women in Research Manifesto, a process that started with a small debate in the YouLead Summit 2023 that was held in Nairobi, Kenya, where we began having conversations about what it is that is stopping women from engaging in academia and actually participating in research in general. And then this conversation was built up into a More Women in Research seminar that was held in March this year on the sidelines of the International Women's Day. And on that week in particular, we had quite some deep conversations about the challenges, about the best practices, about the possible solutions for the problem of having more women in research. This conversation then led into the development of a steering group that led in the development of a More Women in Research Manifesto. As it is now, we are still calling it a draft because we have not heard from you. And this is what excites us the most about having you here today. To be able to contribute to this material and also to be able to, either endorse or even improve some of the recommendations that have been made. You will be hearing about all of this today, and we will give you an opportunity to also give your feedback, make input and make additions to this document. We are also going to give you a chance to also join in the call to action, and of course, the possibility of even you joining into the call to action now, so that we are agreeing that when we finally launch this manifesto, you're going to be a part of the team that is going to be pushing the agenda of more women in research around the globe. Even as I said that, the launch of this manifesto is going to be happening on the 4th of November at the YouLead Summit 2024, which will be held in Arusha, Tanzania. And the quality of the manifesto we develop now will determine the quality of the campaign that we're going to have after this. I trust you and the people who have already participated in this process in the last couple of days to do an excellent job in ensuring that then the tool that we send out there for the campaign will be powerful, will be influential, and will impact the people that are going to receive it. Without further ado, I'm going to invite the guests who have joined this conversation and are going to be helping us navigate this conversation. And I'm hoping that they will also help us show and demonstrate from their own stories that it is possible for women, one, to participate in research, to influence development, to impact development in our societies, and eventually to help in the production of knowledge that will be used to design our development processes. All of the people who have found their way into this panel are people who have participated in academia, have broken the ceiling, and sometimes some of them feel like they haven't broken the ceiling yet, but they're here because we believe in the steps that they have made, and we believe that they could be an encouragement to one or all of you. To start us off, I'm going to invite Professor Lilian Tibatemwa Buzbinza, who's a judge of the Supreme Court of Uganda, who's going to start us off with a conversation and just a sharing of what her experience is and maybe even her thoughts on this entire conversation. Professor Tibatemwa, we are ready for you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of what is certainly an exciting agenda. Now, I think the question I really am asking is, we are talking about the need to bridge the gender gap. And the question really is, why should we call for more women in research? And that is what I'm going to, to call the clarion call for increased participation of women in research, a clarion call for more women in leadership, and a clarion call for more research on gender justice, because these three go hand in hand. Yes, we can even for now remind ourselves of what research is, and for our purposes, it is just a systematic process of inquiry and investigation. And when we engage in it, we should aim at discovering new knowledge. We should aim at solving problems and advancing our understanding of the society we live in. And I posit that the value of research is really because it is the cornerstone of innovations and progress, driving advancements in technology, medicine, social sciences, and indeed in other countless fields. So as we talk about the need for change in society, for even change in the gender makeup of the research community, we should always remember that research should be a precursor to raising voices. It should be a forerunner to activism. And in fact, research has the power to give legitimacy to calls for improvement or change in society, which we as women leaders and activists believe in. So that's why I ask the question, why do we call for change? I think in terms of change in society, we already know that societies world over often lead towards patriarchy. So, such communities are structured, as we all know, on hierarchical systems of oppression, where men as a class hold power over women. Certainly, a society based on such a hierarchical system cannot ensure justice for all or gender justice and equality. It cannot ensure women's empowerment. So, of course, we must engage in research as women, or indeed anybody who belongs to a marginalized group of people. We engage in research for self-preservation, since research provides legitimacy for us to call for change in the community. Go on. Of course, yes, we acknowledge already that the gender makeup of a profession, in this case, the gender makeup of the community of researchers, significantly impacts its culture, but even more important, sets the agenda for a particular profession, or in this case, the community of researchers. So women researchers certainly play a critical role in promoting equity in ways distinct from their male counterparts. So I posit that most of the women or female researchers are more likely to be alive to the specific concerns and interests of women. That's why we call for more women in research. And of course, we have to remember that central to feminist discourse is is the need for a woman to participate and critically engage in the processes that affect her. We know that research and how it is interpreted affects women. Therefore, women researchers have a special role to play in advancing the research agenda. We also acknowledge that, yes, men can be invaluable allies in the fight for women's empowerment, but women cannot rely exclusively on men. So we must be at the forefront of leading the charge for gender justice and equality. But it's not enough for us to talk about women participating in research. We must also look at the position of women in the hierarchy of research communities. Women's presence in leadership positions would allow them to influence the agenda of the research community. So by driving the research agenda, women can mainstream the need for promoting gender equality for women, but also for other marginalized groups. Empowering women in leadership roles is essential for fostering a more inclusive and equitable research environment. Yes, we already know, I think the group here already knows that the statistics available show that the presence of female researchers in leadership positions is very low. Influential women in research are still few and far between. Leadership within a community sets its agenda, and that's why we must deal with the issue of not just numbers, but the need to increase leadership, women's leadership in research. So, of course, then the question must be, how can we bring more women into leadership positions within the research community? How can we ensure that women are present in spaces where they can lead impactful research? And for me, one of the ways or one of the strategies is mentorship. It is often said that many of the world's successful people have benefited from having a mentor. Indeed, mentoring is a vehicle for leadership development. So the way forward, or part of the strategy, one of the strategies is that if we agree that an increase of influential women researchers is critical in changing the research agenda, the few women in the high echelons of the community of researchers must necessarily offer themselves as mentors. But we also need the people who need mentoring to be active. So upcoming women must identify their role models as potential mentors. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Tibatemwa. Kemi, if you could please help me with the person who's interfering with the... Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor, for that very compelling presentation. Indeed, you mentioned critical points. Before I proceed, I have just realized that I have not introduced myself to my audience, and so you may not know who's speaking to you. My name is Stella Agara. I'm the program coordinator for the Together for Impact Partnership, which hosts the program that then ended up delivering this More Women in Research Manifesto in collaboration with all the researchers that are working with the NIDA Fellowship Center. And for today, my heart is that I'm going to be your host of the conversation for the day. You all had the professor going through a list of very important points, and I took note of the fact that she mentioned that research then provides an opportunity for discovering of new knowledge and understanding the society that we live in. And she's talking about research being the tool and the key that lends power or legitimacy to the design of our development processes. She has mentioned that research is also the mechanism through which we can be able to achieve self-preservation, especially for the groups that are least represented, including women, and also research affecting women in many ways, but then having also the challenge of not being able to entirely depend on men to think of the needs of women, even as they're engaging in research. And I think she has shared some of the statistics that then prove that indeed women must be on the table for this to happen. And then, of course, she's saying how we should ask ourselves how we can bring women onto the spaces where they can lead impactful research and influence how research is done, and of course the results that come out of a research process. And I think she did mention something very important, which is the place of mentorship in research. And considering the audience that we have, a good number of them are young people from our networks, they would definitely want to know how then do they get into this space if this is what we are saying they should take up. I know in the next conversations we are also going to be gathering some knowledge on this, but thank you so much, Professor Tibatemo, for bringing that to the fore. Next, I'm going to invite the Senior Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Academics at the University of Witwatersrand. This is Professor Ruxana Osman, who's also going to share with us her reflections on this topic and maybe her thoughts on some of the things that we could do to make to increase that we'll have more women in research. Professor Ruxana, the floor is yours.
Thank you so very much. I'm just wondering if you can hear me. There it goes. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you. So good afternoon from a rather chilly Johannesburg. It's very uncharacteristic weather, and I'm absolutely delighted to be in this meeting. It feels like such an honor to be among so many of you who have the topic of inclusion at your heart, of who you are and what you do. I had an opportunity to look at the draft manifesto that you've put together, and I found it really inspiring of what is possible when women get together and work in a deliberate and in a deliberative way. I thought you came up with a really thoughtful blueprint about what universities and other stakeholders like the media, government, donors, and workplaces can do to enable women to thrive, and in universities, women in research. I think the fact that you looked at all levels of society tells me very clearly that you have recognized that to advance women in research can not only be tackled by one stakeholder or one societal group, but that it is a whole society issue and must be addressed holistically. That you've recognized that to have more women in research is not about fixing women, but rather about fixing the structures for the next generation of scholars. So thank you very much for sharing your manifesto with me. Allow me a few minutes to reflect very briefly on my own experience of trying to put together programs that attempt to be inclusive, especially of women in higher education. It's interesting that I'm not speaking about my own experience of being excluded or my own experience of exclusion in higher education, and that's a conversation for another time. Instead, I will speak about what I've learned from my experience of exclusion and how this experience has guided me when I've put together inclusive programs when I was the Dean of Humanities and now as a Senior Deputy Vice-Chancellor. So I've been very lucky to have been able to put together programs for women in research, inclusive programs that have helped me on the basis of my own exclusion. I think we are all aware that universities exist within a dynamic global higher education system that is facing many challenges, including increasing accessibility, remaining sustainable, mitigating the risks brought by new technologies, and importantly, about being inclusive and gender inclusive in particular. So, since the advent of democracy in South Africa, universities have been transforming, although at different stages and different paces. The global call for transformation in higher education, epitomized by South Africa's #Rhodes Must Fall movement in 2015, demanded fundamental changes in how universities approach knowledge and knowledge creation and inclusivity. Our university, the University of the Witwatersrand, called WITS, not WITS, responded to this call for change with a focus on developing an inclusive professoriate program. Our ambition was to diversify the professoriate in its broadest sense by improving demographic and gender representation in senior academic positions, while at the same time fostering disciplinary diversity to drive innovation. So what have I learned from this? And I'm wondering if those who drafted the manifesto had a similar dilemma. While I was putting together these inclusive programs, I always had the dilemma. Should our diversification programs be an enhancement intervention or a fast-track intervention? And as you have set out in your manifesto, I also recognized that meaningful change requires time, it requires resources and unwavering support. And with that, I concluded that our intervention at WITS should be an enhancement intervention, not a fast-track intervention. And that through strategic investments, we should be able to enable women academics who participate in the program to focus on research, to create leadership opportunities, and to offer bespoke coaching to nurture the next generation of academic leaders. Prof. Tibatemwa spoke about the importance of mentoring, and here I'm making the same reference to the need for bespoke coaching to nurture the next generation. My experience of leading some of these diversification programs suggests that we need hard and soft interventions. Hard interventions include funding for teaching buyouts, research projects, and conference attendance. Equally crucial are soft interventions which require building confidence in the scholar to navigate institutional culture and to foster participation in key decision-making committees in the university. I've learned that support for enhancement and inclusion cannot be standardized or imposed. It must stem from self-identified needs followed by a tailored, well-resourced program. Thinking of enabling more women to participate in research in this way will enable the nurturing of a generation of academic staff who represent the best of the talent on the continent. The diverse backgrounds bring fresh perspectives. They transform academic inquiry and knowledge generation. My sense is that this kind of a continental pool of talent would be poised to make a substantial contribution to global scholarship and leadership from their vantage points in the global South. I'm of the view, and from my experience, that by investing in demographic, gender, and disciplinary diversity, we are able not to just change the face of academia, but we are also able to reshape its very foundations. Through this kind of work that the manifesto is proposing, we are creating a global higher education landscape that reflects the rich diversity of our societies, that pushes the boundary of knowledge across disciplines, and which prepares women to tackle complex challenges. In one of your presentations early on when the program started, one of the interviewees said very clearly that women are able to tackle complex problems because they are also solution-driven. I think now more than ever, the very work that you do is under siege, and impulses to be just and inclusive in higher education are under threat globally. There are many who think that any intervention that supports women to advance are a waste of time and resources, and the focus should be on the whole institution. My sense is working in a deliberate way to be inclusive of women in the academy and in all spheres of life is equal to global innovation, to democracy, to peace, and to prosperity for all. To my mind, increasing and strengthening the participation of women in all spheres of society makes far more sense and is far more inclusive, and it makes for democratic practices, and I think will go a long way towards a better and a peaceful world for all, peace that we are so in need of currently. I would like to conclude by saying I have no doubt that with your clear sense of yourself and your manifesto, you will make an impact on the Academy as we know it today. I also want to thank you for your bold manifesto and to wish you well in upcoming summit in November. I want to remind you, though, that the work you are doing and the actions that your manifesto commits to are not just about education and inclusion, but they are also about social justice in and through education. And I think this is a momentous decade for women in Africa, and you, through your manifesto, are shaping it. I thank you for the time.
Thank you so much, Professor Osman. Honestly, your presentation has covered quite some bases on the conversation that we have had. And I don't know about the rest of the women who joined the meeting in March in the room, but my feeling is that it's almost like your spirit was in the room when we were having the conversations. You've mentioned critical issues that came up in our conversations, that came up in our debates, and you know, even some of the unanswered questions that we asked ourselves have definitely come up in your presentation. And definitely the critical question of whether we should the diversification of our program should be an enhancement or a fast track is something that came up in our conversations. And I'm glad you're bringing us closer to the answer in saying that we should invest in the speed with which women get into research, but also in the quality by ensuring that it's an enhancement and we are building on what already exists and ensuring that as many people as possible access opportunities. I think the question of tailored programs came up in that conversation and it continues to come up today, which means we are also getting emphasis on that recommendation to push it to the different spaces. Indeed, every woman who spoke echoed the words that women are able to tackle complex problems because they are also solution-driven. And majority of them said that women should be given more space to participate in the design of development so that then we can consistently bring in that skill of designing solutions for different kinds of problems. And I'm excited that this has come from you, which means it's an affirmation of that particular proposal. I am glad that you have brought up the fact that funding or investment in programs that promote women's participation, women's involvement, women's empowerment is now considered a waste of time. And of course, as part of the campaign that we're going to be carrying out around this manifesto, we have carried that burden heavily because we have to remind the world that investment in women and investment in women at all levels, even at the leadership levels that Professor Tibatemo was talking about, is extremely critical. You have indicated that including women in development and including women in the design of research will eventually impact the world in many ways. But I took out the mention of peace. And of course, the conversation of peace and how conflict arises in the world and how it's even addressed or who is the perpetrator is definitely a critical conversation for women to actually say, you know what, it's about time you start including us in designing how we're going to address the conflict situations in the world and stop the emergence of conflict everywhere in the place. I believe that I'm in agreement with you that if we had more women, we probably would have more solutions for the conflict situations that we have in the world. And I know I will not be challenged on this one. I am extremely excited also, and and I think everyone else who was in this process is excited about your endorsement of the manifesto and what it represents. This is definitely an affirmation and also an encouragement for us to keep working on this so that by the time we are launching it, we are confident about the tool that we're sending out, and in your words, you're saying it will transform academia. And I hope that everyone in the audience is agreeing with this and is committing themselves then to carry this tool as a result of your affirmation. Thank you so much, Professor Osman. We truly appreciate your presence and even the valuable points that you made. I will not take much more time. I will just quickly invite Dr. Njoki Wamai. Dr. Njoki Wamai was in the conversation in March. Dr. Njoki Wamai has been in the journey of the development of the manifesto. In our assessment in the planning committee for this particular event, we considered her as having broken the ceiling. But she contends that she has not broken the ceiling. However, in conversations with her, we have discovered that there are layers of ceilings that have been broken. And of course, there's room for assessment of what some of those slippery floors that Dr. Sarah Sali was talking about in the video are about. And I think I am too excited to invite Dr. Njoki Wamai, who's an assistant professor of politics and international studies at the United States International University, Africa, because one, I am very, very proud of her achievements, but I'm also one of the people who has been on the front row observing her trajectory. And so it is interesting to hear her story. I'm hoping you're also going to be as inspired by her story as I am. Dr. Njoki, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Stella. And thank you everybody who is on board, MSTCDC for inviting me, and of course with the whole team that has been working on this manifesto. To my sisters also who we developed this manifesto together. I'm very excited that we've come to this place. It's been quite a long journey. And I'm very, very proud of all of us also for the work you've done, for the work we have done. So I just want to also, I don't know whether to take notice that we are actually about 260 women researchers. That is a huge number in one virtual room. And I think we need to really congratulate ourselves for that. Because as we know, we are often the two women in the room in your university where people will be saying weird things about women, and sometimes you fight, sometimes you leave another day. Emma Kamara, I think there's some okay, thank you. So there was somebody. So you can see, I mean, it's actually a celebration. We are more than, and the numbers are growing, more than 260 women in one room, as much as we are not there physically, and women researchers, I think. So thank you very much, MSTDC, for doing this. And I hope we can keep meeting. I think because we don't actually meet across the continent, and we have so much to talk about our pains and our joys. We are also not just going to, and that's, I think, what the manifesto captures. The pains and the joys, and more importantly, the opportunities of being a woman researcher, a woman academic in this continent. And as Stella said, me and Stella, we go a long way. We started off, we are still activists, youth activists. So I came to the academy much later, not so much later, maybe in my early 30s after going to study. And maybe a short introduction. So I worked as a youth activist, and then a women's activist. And then I went to do so I'm from Kenya, the University of Nairobi, that's where I studied. And then I went to do my master's at King's College, London. And then I went to do my PhD at the University of Cambridge under Gates Cambridge Scholarship. And I'm saying this thing so that you all know it's possible. Before I went to Cambridge or to King's, I even had never met anybody who went to Cambridge till I met one person. And so and I keep saying many times, we African women, so that is one ceiling I broke. You know, nobody in my entire village or whatever had gone to, say, an Ivy League university. So that's that's a ceiling I broke. There's still so many other ceilings I need to break, as you know, in academia. And I think we were talking about those different ceilings. All of us have broken with Stella. And so each of you think about it. Many of you probably, you're the first person in your home, maybe among your mother's children, to even go to high school, beyond high school. You probably are the first person among your mother's children, or you and your cousins, and to have gone to university. Forget about doing a PhD or a master's, an undergraduate degree. They are called first generation. So first generation, you're that first generation kid. So even when you went to university, you had no idea, I mean, how even a university looks like. Even you opened the doors for so many people, even for your own parents to come and see, oh, this is how university people live like, you know? And many times I think we don't appreciate ourselves enough because of those many ceilings that we break. So a ceiling does not have to be like, for me, going to Cambridge, which of course is all nice, or now I'm actually seated at the Stellenbosch Institute of Advanced Studies, which is the only advanced study center in the Global South. And I really encourage you also apply to this center. It's like what the professor from WITS was telling us about. How do we get more women to become better researchers? So this is one place where they're trying to create better researchers. So I'm on a short sabbatical. My time has been bought out at my university for me to be here, to do research, to do my writing. So please check out the Stellenbosch Institute of Advanced Studies. So all these opportunities exist, but we are constantly breaking ceilings. So by being here, I hope many of you can apply for that. So also start seeing your life in that way. So if you are the first person to go beyond primary school, always mention this to people around you and tell them it's possible. Don't just say it's possible. This is the way, and show them the way. This is what you need to do. Sometimes you're the first person, as I said, to go beyond high school, to go to university. And then after that, you break another ceiling. I was that first person in my father's family, for instance, to go to university, the first person. And to do a master's, to do a PhD. And because of me, so many other people have done it. Now I think I have two of my cousins with PhDs, so many others with masters. But and of course, because it's been done. So let's see our lives as those kind of people who open doors for others, but don't close the door. Keep it open. Keep it open and tell them this is the way to get there. So yes, in many ways, in that way, I'm still breaking the glass ceiling by being, say, in this institute, where again, you'll find very few of us women, very few of us African women. And so we need to keep pushing. And how do we make sure we keep breaking the ceiling? As much as I still think I've not broken the ceiling, like I want to write so many books, I'm still writing. So those are ceilings I still need to break. I want to be considered a serious scholar internationally, not just in Kenya or in Africa. So those are ceilings that I still need to break. And so for me, there are different stages of ceilings. So keep breaking every ceiling, even and appreciating the journey, even if it's just you are the first person who never got children at teenage in your home, because that's what happens, or in your village, So appreciate that, and please hold the hands of others so that they can be able to also see somebody like them. And that's why every time people tell me, let's go and mentor girls in some place else in Kenya, I'm very happy to, but I always say, do you know women who have achieved from that area? Because they speak more to those issues. I'm happy to support those. Let them speak because it's their journey. So let's keep breaking those ceilings and appreciating those journeys and celebrating. So, and I think that's what our manifesto does. It shows the pain, the joy, and the opportunities that still exist. And I must say I am also a living testimony of those of the pains of exclusion, also being excluded in the academy. And also, and you also know, beyond being excluded, some of the challenges many of you women have had to face in the male patriarchal academy. And it's all over the world the same. The only difference is different places in the world have more structure, have more safeguarding. And those are some of the things we really need to make sure they're implemented. Safeguards to prevent, for instance, sexual harassment of women. And not just as we academics, also young women. Because if young women are harassed in the university, they will not want to be academics. They'll be like, I don't want to be like those men who are preying on me and that kind of thing. So whether it's sexual harassment, whether it's just exclusion from committees, and let's create sisterhood. And I think that's one way for me. I move and I believe in creating sisterhood. When you go to any space, and in the academy, I've realized people actually, because it's so patriarchal, people will go and join a group of men and sometimes, you know, be fighting the women. No, it won't help you. Get into that space and create sisterhood. Look for other women, whether it means creating a little group of researchers where you write proposals together, or just women who you meet sometimes to sigh. You know, sighing is very important as African, not just as African women, all women, to sigh, to celebrate. So create spaces for sisterhood. And then I think that will help us as we continue breaking the glass ceiling and managing the slippery floors. There's this concept of slippery floors. But I think the manifesto captures all these struggles. But and I just want to celebrate each of us here. I'm very, very excited. I've never seen 263 women, research women together. So for me, this is actually very monumental. And we need to be doing this often, because there's so much that I think we need to talk about and find solidarity and find, what can I say, strategies to deal with together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Njoki. One of the things that we pride ourselves in as the organizations, the Partnership for Together for Impact, is the ability to mobilize. And so those numbers you're seeing are as a result of efforts by seasoned organizers of virtual consultations and people who have understood the algorithm of convening such meetings. I am excited about the fact that you've mentioned about opening up facilities to people who've never seen them, that there are people who have never seen a university facility, and some of them are intimidated by the gates of universities. The ability to allow them to actually walk in there and see that it's human beings who exist in that space opens up that space for very many women who may never be able to even reach that particular gate. And I know that there's a culture in most African countries where when you're graduating, your entire family gets into a minibus and travels to come and celebrate you. And it allows even grannies who may never have entered a university to get a chance to be there. But it also gives those who have a vision an opportunity to see where it is that they can aspire to go to. And I think that was quite compelling. Breaking layered ceilings, appreciating the journey, appreciating your personal records and ensuring that you're constantly celebrating your personal records, quite critical to this conversation, so that we are not taking the entire burden of reaching the top of academia or the top of participation in research, but we're saying every step we make counts, every opportunity we get counts, and we must ensure that we then celebrate those steps so that we are not discouraged along the way, considering all the other challenges that we find along the way, as have been mentioned by Professor Roxana and Professor Tibatemwa in their conversation. Holding hands, I think now we know that this is a thread along the entire conversation. And even as you're listening as our audience, mentorship is definitely something that every speaker has emphasized and should carry into the conversation of the manifesto. Having heard it from all the speakers, I think it's an endorsement of that message. Creating sisterhood and sisterhoods that will provide us an opportunity to either sigh or celebrate, because we then need those spaces to get to catch our breath as we continue climbing this mountain of having more women in research. Those were such powerful speakers, and we truly, truly appreciate the contribution that you've made to this conversation. At this point, we were supposed to be inviting a representative from the East Africa community. We had invited Dr. Irene Isaka to come and speak in this platform. She was the director for social services, but she has gotten a redeployment to a different role in education in Tanzania. However, She has sent her blessings. We spoke just before this meeting. She has sent her blessings, and she has said if she gets an opportunity, she will be able to come in and greet us. But if she doesn't, she truly blesses the work that we are doing here today. And we will definitely be sharing the outcomes of this conversation and the manifesto with the EAC Department for Social Services, because it's responsible for education. And that material will then be shared with the heads of state summit, because then once it gets, the process through which it gets to the heads of state summit will cause them to subject it to a committee of ministers for education, who will then have a chance to review what recommendations we are making. One of the commitments we are making to you is that we work very closely with the East Africa community, and therefore we will use this process to just push them and nudge them a little bit more so that they can be able to influence academia in the 8 now members of the EAC. Member states of the EAC, so that they can begin to view education in such a manner. For those of you who don't know who the members of the East Africa community are, it includes Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan, Democratic Republic of Congo, and the new entrant, the Republic of Somalia. Having said that, I'm going to quickly move us to the next part of the program because we're a bit behind schedule, but I trust this team because they have interacted with this material for a while. I did mention that there was a meeting in the month of March alongside the International Women's Day. 50 women gathered here at the MS Training Center in Arusha, Tanzania, and they were able to discuss some of the challenges that even have come up in the speeches you just heard. And they were also able to discuss the possible recommendations that could be deployed to address these issues. I am not going to spoil the presentation by even preempting what they're about to share with you. They have a very excellent presentation that will enable you to understand this. To start us off, are 2 women who come from 2 communities in this region of East Africa that are quite marginalized and have been kept quite far away from education. So the fact that they've not found themselves in this conversation at the level they are in is a broken ceiling, and I think we must celebrate that. We have Dr. Agatha Alidri of the Faculty of Education and Humanities at Gulu University in Uganda. Those of you who know the history of Gulu would know that coming from Gulu, honestly, even breaking that ceiling and being able to reach a place of having a Faculty of Education and Humanities in Gulu University, and Gulu University is actually a break in education in general, but also a space provided for women to get access to education. And then, of course, we also have Dr. Lanoi Malloy from Kenya. This is an independent feminist researcher who has done a lot of work in research on feminism and of course, feminist approaches to development and just how to ensure that there's intersectionality in the way we define our development. These 2 will talk to us about why and how the manifesto came about and the issues that it raises. Over to you, Dr. Agatha and Dr. Lanoi. And I remember that we truly celebrate you and how you made it here to even this conversation. Over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Stella, for the very warm introduction. And thank you also for the speakers before us. We really are standing on the shoulders of giants. You've given us a platform, and you've given us some discussion points, but also viewpoints that we perhaps had not seen. Thank you to Professor Tibatemwa. It was really insightful for looking at discussions around research, and also Professor Osman and Dr. Njoki. We really appreciate that contextualization. And it's along this contextualization that we were brought together from the 5th of March to the 8th of March around the International Women's Day. And we were talking about some of the issues that are plaguing women in terms of research and in academia. So we talked about what is happening. Women are entering into universities. We are seeing them in all these places, but they are not being retained. And we noticed there was somewhat of a leaky pipeline, just like how you have leaky pipes, your water is not able to be retained. Women are just leaking out of the system. And we wanted to know what is it and what can we do to fix these leaky pipes. So we had a lot of discussions, and we had a lot of guest speakers talking to us over the 3 days, and over tea, over lunch, and also in the evenings, the 2 of us and a bit of a group of women met together to talk about summarizing the guest speakers, but also trying to think about what is the way forward. We can't always be lamenting and asking ourselves what is happening, why is the rain beating us? We need to have a way forward. So in those evenings, in those lunchtime discussions, we began to get a seed of a thought about a manifesto that we could try to push towards different institutions to help us with this, because we realized that even though there's 1 in 3 researchers are women, there's some structural issues. There's a couple of things. There's structural issues within the universities, and as Dr. Njoki said, there are the issues around harassment of girls, so they don't want to continue. They don't want to be in an environment that they are harassed, that they have to do transactions to be able to pass or to continue with their studies. So there's that structural issue, but there's also some issues around patriarchy, and I think it's Professor Lillian who talked about these patriarchal societies where men have power over women. So it's not only the attitudes, but they also enact that in the structures, in the institutions. So it now forms systemic and institutional barriers. Because what happens now is that even when funding comes for different aspects, even if it's supposed to be a gender study, you'll find men as PIs. You'll find men discussing certain issues. To me, it was very interesting. You'll find men from certain communities who don't face FGM or early marriages. They're the ones who are leading those research. And you wonder, are there no women from a community that practices FGM that can be PIs or co-PIs? Why must men be leading this? So we see these patriarchal issues in the forefront. We see these patriarchal attitudes in the forefront. And it is in this context that we have discussed having a manifesto to ensure that these attitudes are phased out, that these structural barriers are phased out. And how can we do this? It is through this manifesto. So we talked about that, but also we talked about some of the issues around the gender barriers, the work-life balance. Actually, we had a lot of discussion about the multiple roles that women inhabit. You're a mother, you're a wife, you're a sister, you're a daughter, you're a caregiver, and all these things, you still have to do your professional work. Whereas men have someone who's doing their productive roles. For instance, women, you're expected to perform at home and perform at work. And never the two should meet, or never the two should meet. So
Lanoy, the audio is breaking. You're breaking.
It's breaking. Okay. Can you hear me now? Is it better? A little bit better.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know whether it is the camera. Maybe I can switch it off. It might help a little bit.
Maybe try that. Try and switch off the camera and see how that works.
Yes. So I don't know if it's working now. It's a little bit better. Is it a bit better?
Keep going so that we can tell if it's improving.
Okay. So we were talking about the work-life balance conflict, or so what we discussed during 5 days, that there was a harmonization issue, that we were not being able to harmonize the two fronts, the domestic and the professional fronts. And so apart from the institutional and patriarchal attitudes, there was also the issue around the gender barriers and how do we marry up our own personal commitments, our own domestic responsibilities with our own career ambitions. This was a real challenge, and we talked about having a social cost to career, or having a social cost to being a woman in academia. And it is from this discussion that we now came up with a manifesto. So we had at least 3 core aims of the manifesto. We had, the aim was to create an awareness of these inequalities and challenges that women in research and women in academia face. Because sometimes what happens is that you find that you're invalidated when you try to speak about these inequalities. We find men or sometimes even women who are aligned to men will say, but there's no problem, there's no inequality. Women are now equal to men. And we are not shedding light to these inequalities and how they challenge, how they force women out of academia. So one of the key things was to create awareness of inequalities and challenges women face in research. And also the critical thing, facilitating the process of breaking the glass ceiling for women in research. You know, Dr. Njoki talked about being a first. We are still having a lot of firsts. Firsts. Even now, you'll find that it's only recently maybe a woman dean is in a particular department. We need to move past this. And the way to do it is to break these glass ceilings for all women. And the key thing here is to be able to change the research landscape, but also to have research that facilitates or makes life easier for women. In our research methods class where we do feminist research, we talk to some of our researchers and they are shocked sometimes to find out even things like the way seatbelts are made. They were made with a man in mind. When we look at how test drive dummies are, it's usually a male figure. And that's why you find seatbelts, I don't know for you ladies how you feel, but seatbelts are so uncomfortable. It's from this premise, something as simple as a seatbelt is tested out on a male form. So how do you expect it to fit a woman's form? We need more women in research. So finally, our third manifesto objective is about providing recommendations for different stakeholders to give this awareness and to facilitate the process of breaking the glass ceiling for women. I think I can give my colleague, Dr. Agatha, some time to discuss. I believe she's in the virtual room. So, Dr. Agatha, please do feel free to fill in where I have missed out. Thank you. Dr. Agatha?
Yes, thank you so much, Lenoi. You have raised the critical issues in your presentation. But what I would like to say is this: in raising up our voices through this manifesto, our focus and main agenda was to ensure that more women in research leads to quality research undertaken by women, and also enabling women to navigate women's space in research and grow research, which is women-centered research, a research which is women-based, studying women, raising women issue, and leading to more publications by women. Therefore, women breaking the ceiling in research and publication. And that should also be able to lead us to innovations by women, and also for both women and development. Thank you so much. Back to you, Lenoi.
Okay, I think from my end, we are done. I think we can hand over back to Stella so that perhaps we can replace some of the time lost. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much for that very precise presentation, and I'm glad you are able to save us some time. We will quickly move to the next step where we're going to be discussing some of the recommendations that came out of this conversation, because I know you're asking yourself, after discovering all the challenges that Dr. Lenoi and Dr. Agatha have shared with us, then what were we saying are the changes that we made, or recommendations that I'm not thinking about or the recommendations that we are making to improve the situation for women in research. And to assist me with that conversation, I am first going to invite the first lot of presenters who are going to share a portion of the presentation of the recommendations, and then I'm going to get a second lot. Why I'm explaining this process is because we have 7 areas in which we want to do actually 8 areas in which you want to do a presentation of recommendations. And in order to help the audience to respond in a very targeted way, we want to deal with 4 of them first and then 4 of them after. Some of these include the question of women in research, higher learning and research institutions, what recommendations we have for government institutions, what recommendations we have for funders. We're also going to be talking about some of the recommendations we have for the private sector. Indeed, they do have a role to play. We'll be talking about the recommendations that we have to civil society organizations in order to continue pushing this agenda. We'll be talking about publishers and the media and what recommendations we have for them. To help me execute this, I am going to invite Dr. Lizelle van Dijk, who's an associate professor, University of Witwatersrand, Johannesburg, the School of Chemical and Metallurgical Engineering, South Africa. I'm also going to invite Dr. Jenny Falconer, the Director and Technical Manager at, let me pronounce this, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Chiwenga Technologies, South Africa. These two are going to very ably help us go through the recommendations that were made, and they were quite instrumental in this conversation, starting from the meeting in March until now. They brought in quite a new dimension and a fresh experience into this conversation, and you will notice as they speak to you. Over to you, Lizelle and Jenny, and it's lovely to see you all looking very beautiful.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Okay, so I'm going to begin, and while I was busy just trying to prepare, I actually read something that Margaret Thatcher, the former Prime Minister of Britain, said. She said, if you want something said, ask a man, and if you want something done, ask a woman. And although this might sound like great for women power, if you actually read it again, it speaks to the fact that women are not speaking up. And that is quite shocking. So as women and women in research, I would like to just say that we are powerful, resilient, and great. And if we want to effect change, we must lead that change and insist on change by actively seeking it out. We need to actively seek it out, and we need to recognize our own agency. So the women researchers who attended the More Women in Research workshop in March 2024, we commit to the following things, and we invite all our sisters. And I liked it when Nyoki said our sisters, because that's how we see each other after that workshop, is to unite with us, to challenge the traditional gender roles, be the female role models, and then also to promote females role models, and to have those difficult conversations about our career aspirations and what we want, to actively seek growth opportunities, and to consciously support each other in all spaces. You know, we must make it our goal to support other women. And so therefore, I think by doing that, we will acknowledge that we as women in research play a critical role in seeing that the recommendations to other stakeholders are heard and also executed. And then we also recognize the need for support from various stakeholders to change the current gender disparity statistics. The next group that we looked at was the institutions of higher learning and research institutions. So most of us, the women in research, work at these institutions, which are still male-dominated. There's exhibiting gender biases that limit women's access to research opportunities. And so I think we can all acknowledge that there is need for change. First is to increase the representation and reduce bias, gender biases. And of course, this can then lead to diversity of perspectives, which is great for institutions of higher learning and research institutions. They can support women in their professional development. They can promote access to education and research opportunities for women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And yes, I'm a woman that comes from that area, and yes, it's very much male-dominated. And also to support the early career women researchers, because what we want to do as these institutions is we want to inspire young women and girls to pursue careers in academia and in research. And we just looked at a few things that we can recommend higher institutions, institutions of higher learning and research. To achieve this would be to recruit more female academic staff, to provide seed grants for early career female academics, to lobby for scholarships for female staff, and encourage female mentorship. Jenny, I think that's my cue to you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go through governmental institutions. Governments, obviously, they make the policies that affect the other stakeholders listed in this manifesto. So by them themselves, they have the power of they are huge agents of change. It's because of this that it's imperative to recognize the role of government and its views on this topic that have an overarching effect on the abilities and the motivations of all the other parties for real sustainable change. What we were found to be very important when we were drafting this manifesto document was to acknowledge that every single country here is governed in a unique set of conditions by a governance structure that holds its own agenda and faces unique, sometimes considerable challenges to achieving the goals in this document. So it's so important to understand that the value and significance of change is going to look very different in every single country. We really tried to aim to create a set of goals that are wide enough that they speak to the different starting points of each government, while also allowing for meaningful methods to measure and acknowledge that progress is happening. As a document, the World Economic Forum 2020 Global Gender Gap Report estimated that global parity between genders is going to be achieved in 132 years, which is not good enough. This rate of change must be accelerated. And so government institutions have got to put the work in. So what we've recommended is the development and implementation of policies that explicitly promote gender equality in academia and the workplace in general. The outcomes and progress of these policies should be measured and reported transparently. So in a nutshell, what we've said is that we should target a minimum of 30% women in research in positions across all disciplines, especially STEM, with incremental increases where those targets have already been met, with a long-term goal of 50%. We should establish safe and inclusive workspaces, places where women can feel comfortable and supported so that they've got the support that they need in the workplace. Things like lactation rooms, daycares, mainstream gender into the education curriculum. We want to see the inclusion of women and marginalized groups in policy consultations and designs, especially when those policies affect that particular group. And then by implementing these recommendations, both within the structures of government departments themselves and within policy governing the wider economy, we can foster a more inclusive and equitable environment that supports growth and success of women in research and beyond. These recommendations specifically talk about women in research, but I believe that these recommendations can be taken into account in structuring governmental departments as well. And then we had a look at funders. So the core responsibility of academic research is to continuously generate and disseminate knowledge. And career advancement in this field is therefore tied to conducting good quality research, but that is highly dependent on funding. Historically, however, the participation of women and the leadership roles available to them in funded research has been very low. What we would like to put out there is to increase the number of women leading, participating in research. We need to introduce strategies that improve the access to research funds by women, to build the capacity of women in leadership roles, create and establish enabling research environments that consider the specific needs to women with family responsibilities. So some of that is to provide the necessary resources, offer funding opportunities that deliberately target all women research teams, and seed grants for early women researchers, as well as mentorship programs in academic and research institutions for women. If anything in our time together while writing this document has highlighted, and we have mentioned here again today, is that mentorship is a really powerful tool, and we have to work really hard to utilize that tool properly in order to help young women overcome barriers to entry that others have already encountered and overcome. And we would also like to add in the emphasis on gender sensitivity in the implementation of research budgets. So this could mean ensuring that medical trials have male and female participants. It could mean that survey questions are run through gender sensitive analysis before implementation. And it also means things like ensuring public participation is inclusive. Thank you very much, Elena.
Thank you so much for that presentation, quite succinct. I believe the audience has heard the recommendations that were made to those sectors. We are speaking just about those sectors that have been mentioned by Lizelle and Jenny. If you have any other recommendations that we should add onto that section of the manifesto, this is a good time for you to give your feedback. But before I open the floor, I need to one note that you have shared quite some powerful testimonials on the meeting chat room. Some of you are making me, almost driving me to tears by your different stories of how you have influenced your communities to actually want to get into academia. Some of you who've influenced your siblings to even want to study and get degrees, etc. in the university. And I think we are definitely talking to the right audience if these are your stories, all the way from West, Southern Africa. I've seen some stories from East Africa where people are actually just giving testimonials of how they opened up the door or broke ceilings in their stories. Please keep the stories coming. We are definitely saving the chat, and we'll be looking at some of these stories to just see who is in the room and how we can interact with your stories more, to encourage more women to engage in research. Thank you so much also for trusting this space enough to be able to share your stories and announce your victories with us. We celebrate you tremendously as we proceed. The second thing is that for purposes of the conversation after this, because we're starting our conversation here, but for purposes of the conversation after this, my colleague Fiona Kemigisha has shared a WhatsApp group on the chat that you are going to join in order for us to continue this conversation afterwards. I encourage all of you to make a point of joining that WhatsApp group. I would kindly discourage any formation of other spaces because we have a responsibility to protect the data of the people who have joined this conversation. So please don't set up any separate groups. We have a group that has been set up by Fiona Kemigisha. She has put the details on the chat, and that is going to be used to then link you up to all the relevant people who will continue with the conversations after this and do follow-up. Please look out for her on the chat and the link that she's providing that will then help you join the WhatsApp group. I encourage you to stay there, especially because many of the women we have interacted with have been insisting on us speaking to each other, us creating conversations beyond the ones that we have right now, in order to push the manifesto and other research conversations ahead. And just before I came into this meeting, Dr. Njoki was also lecturing me about how we don't have enough spaces to speak. So that will provide an opportunity. Let me open the floor. Those of us who have feedback to the first 4 recommendations, rather the recommendations to the first 4 groups, please raise up your hand and I'm going to give you an opportunity to speak. Do not speak if I do not give you the floor. I will call your name and allow you to speak if within the time that you have available, and then we will close and do the recommendations for the next 4, and then we close that session. So any feedback, I'm looking out for your hands. Betty Rono, I see your hand up. You could take the floor, keep it short and succinct, mention the group that you are giving the recommendation to, and mention the specific recommendation that you're making to them. Betty, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the floor. I raised my hand before I heard your final statement, but anyway, let me just go. I wanted to commend the speakers that I spoke in the beginning. I hope that is okay with you. And I want to applaud all the ladies who have joined the forum. I'm really looking forward to creating very meaningful networks here. I think one of the things that I've learned so far the dimensions that I have not taken time to look at in my own career. For example, the social costs that women go through. I'm one of the researchers that have been so much ups and down, but I didn't realize that we have a social cost that is not equal to all the humanity in research. So the other thing is the fact that while we strive for the breaking of the ceiling, we also have to look at the sticky floors that always hold us down. So I'm looking forward to further discussion amongst that. And I want also to applaud all the other women that have been in so much challenging situations, but they are also, they have broken all these barriers to be with us here today. So that's my just input.
Thank you very much, Betty Ronald. Sumaya Nakayovu, I see your hand up. Please take the floor. If you could tell us which institution, which group, and the recommendation that you're making to that group, would appreciate.
Okay, thank you so much. This is Nakayovu Sumaya from Uganda. Yeah, I'm a student at the Makerere School of Women and Gender Studies doing my master's in gender and working as a youth researcher with the International Center for Research on Women. I have something that I would really want to put across. It is a question I would like to inquire whether you people have fellowships or other engagements that can really give knowledge, more knowledge and skills in research to young women like us. In case they are there, we can kindly share with us the links so that we can apply. Yes, and we embark on breaking the ceilings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sumaya Nakayovu, for your question. We are not going to respond to that question now. We will respond to it later on in the program. Before I pick the next speaker, I am kindly requesting that we stick to the brief so that we get the kind of feedback that we need to feed into the manifesto. I promise you there will be an opportunity to have conversations about all those other things, including the opportunities available for all of us who are in the room. I am going to quickly give the floor to Sarah Sake Matei Olete. If I have ruined your name, please forgive me. The floor is yours.
Hello, I think you did better than even Ghanaians who mentioned my name. Well done. I want to thank our presenters. They have really done marvelous. And this is a good bold step, I should say, in ensuring that there's a gender balance and also all is reached or not left out in research. And I must commend the organizers for this very program. As an alumni, I think this had been an existing gap that needs to be bridged. And this is a bold step that we are taking. I must say that here in Ghana, for instance, being the CHAG IRB administrator, that is the Institutional Review Board administrator, and also in charge of research, my latest report I have, the women are a little above the men, because simply when you come to the institutions, we have majority being females. That is nurses, majority of them are nurses or let's say clinicians. But when you look at the proportion, let's say the number of doctors who are doing research or the number of male clinicians compared to female clinicians, you realize that still there's a gap we need to bridge. Though from my report, for instance, we have about 55% being females applying for, let's say, ethical review. But must that be the proportion? No, we still have some gap to bridge. So I want to commend all of us for this startup, and I hope we'll reach the unreached. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. That was quite some substantive recommendation. The steering committee will look at all the recommendations coming out of this conversation and see how to feed it into the Women's Manifesto. And thank you for trusting us with your feedback. Dr. Kezia Mkwizu, the floor is yours. Who are you speaking to and what recommendation are you making to them?
Yes, thank you very much. I am Dr. Kezia Mkwizu from Tanzania, the United Republic of Tanzania. I wish to thank all those who have made their presentations and recommendations. I have one recommendation. I know the women find it hard to engage in research, but my recommendation is that there should be research retreats, because women have a lot of juggles to do within the households and outside the households. So I think they need a
academic.
Yes, so there should be research retreats for women. Thank you very much.
So, sorry for interrupting you, Dr. Kezia. I was just trying to establish to whom the recommendation would be made, but we appreciate that. We have noted research retreats.
Institutions.
Dr. Julena Jumbe, who was part of this process, your addition, your recommendations, any thoughts?
Yes, Stella, thank you so much. Thanks to the presenters. Mine is just a recommendation if it is possible to have public speaking camps, because sometimes women cannot present their ideas because they are not brought that up and because of the patriarchal system that we have been experiencing. So if we can have boot camps like for us to be practicing how to speak in public, that will be helpful. Maybe if we can liaise with the Mawazo Institute, they might be of help to women to speak and be able to research more and speak the ideas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Julena. Thank God we have Mawazo Institute on board. And indeed, the point you mentioned is extremely important. It's not just important to be able to know what you want to say, but it's also extremely important to know how you're going to deliver it. I'm going to give the last speaking opportunities to 3 people, and then I'll close. I will start quickly with Catherine Boafo, and then this will be followed by Jacinta Ntuyeko. And after Jacinta Ntuyeko, you'll be followed by Blessing Cleopas, and then we close that segment and go to the next one. Quickly mention which group and the recommendation you're making.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity. I just joined the WhatsApp group. It says women in research, but I don't know if there are distinctions. Forgive me. My recommendation will be, and it's more of a question, whether everybody who wants to go into research must have a master's degree or a PhD. That's my first question. And then secondly, I'm a founder of 3 different companies. One is into training and advocacy for women SMEs. But because of my interest in research, I've been able to develop a product that grows African hair. It's a natural product, so you don't get to use the chemicals that give us problems. And all my research has been evidence-based research. But I know that scientifically, there might be disparities between evidence-based research and also scientific research. And I want to be able to bridge the gap in terms of capacity building and knowledge. I have a degree in human resource management and an HND in marketing. What can a woman like myself, who is so poised for more research into plants, do to gain the requisite knowledge, to have a network or a group like your organization, to be able to do more with the solutions we are bringing on board? Because one of my products actually also reverses gray hair. And I'm so interested in trichology because I think that there's a gap in Africa when it comes to even our natural hair. So if I can get any form of recommendation, information, and what we can do to help other women probably who don't have a degree yet to be able to get into research. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Our conversation today is targeting all women, those who already have degrees, those who don't, those who have master's degrees, and those who have PhDs. We are basically saying we want more women in research, whether they're going to be additional women in research at the beginning or at the end. Professor Ruxana has told us it should be enhancement. So wherever we find you, we just take you to the next level. Thank you for your intervention. Jacinta, Ntuyeko, and Blessing, I really hope that there are going to be direct recommendations to the group that have just been shared by Jamie and Lizelle.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, and congratulations for the great work that you're doing. My one recommendation is I just want to tell people I have quickly created the WhatsApp group because I see many people asking for WhatsApp group which I
Allow
am
me to interrupt you, Jacinta, please.
but I'm
Allow
going
me
to
to
delete
interrupt you,
it.
Jacinta. Allow me to interrupt you. We are saying that we will not have multiple WhatsApp groups.
That's what
The
I'm
only
saying.
WhatsApp, the
I'm
only
saying I'm
WhatsApp.
deleting it. I'm saying I'm deleting it. So I'm asking people to look on the official group. I'm gonna delete
Thank
this
you.
in that minute. That's what I wanted to tell people to avoid confusion. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you look on the chat, you will notice that Fiona Kemi of YouLead Africa has written a message and said, "Dear all, please join the official WhatsApp group for this convening at the link below." We promise that we are going to ensure that everybody finds their way into this WhatsApp group. We have all the emails of everyone who registered for this session, so we'll also send an email follow-up. In case, like those who said that their phones or their WhatsApp is not working for now, but they'd want to join later, then you will have this in your email so that you can follow up and join later. But let's try and keep it in one space. All of you who are researchers know the importance of protecting people's data, and we have to keep it that way. And thank you, Jacinta, for that. And finally, Blessing, Cleopa.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, House. I'm so excited to be in your midst. I want to appreciate you for this forum. My contribution is this. I would like the organizer to make this forum to be more frequent, maybe monthly or quarterly or biannually. Anyhow, so that we'll have this forum to ourselves is really an insightful one. More women in research. It's a clearing call. It's up for this season. And number two, I would like to say that if there is a way to issue a certificate of attendance or participation, it will be a good one for all of us, because no knowledge is lost. As we are here, we are being loaded with recent knowledge that can help us in our field of endeavors. It will definitely contribute to our work experiences and our day-to-day life. So if there could be a certificate of attendance to all participants, it will be a good one. And then the frequent forum will be very, very, very much welcome. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Blessing Cleopa. Indeed, we intend to do some follow-up. We will not communicate now what kind of follow-up is going to happen, but by the end of this conversation, we'll have shared what is possible and what is not possible. I'm glad that already in the chat, there are interactions and people are beginning to talk about how they can feed into each other's assignments. And I've even seen there are people like Oluwato Biloba or Deto Imbo, who's already talking about the kind of research she's doing around this very topic and how they can add value to this process. We are saying that don't limit the networking, the collaboration to what we can do as organizers of this event, but also just start networking, and then everything else is going to morph as we go, because we are definitely intent on making sure that we create a community of practice, but let's not agree here on what it will look like or how many of them there will be. We will do that as we go. Let me quickly invite the next speakers who are going to speak about the last groups. Before then, I open the floor again for intervention and addition. My next speakers who are going to be doing the presentations on recommendations from the next 4 stakeholders are Dr. Leah Paretoe from Target Malaria, Burkina Faso, and Dr. Sika Abrokwa, Research Fellow at the Center for Coastal Management, University of Cape Coast, Ghana. These 2 women were also a part of the March meeting, women who have gone through the assignment of breaking the ceiling with such precision. And I know they're going to do a great job of speaking for the next, concerning the next target groups and what recommendations we've made to them. Over to you, my sisters. I know you'll do a good job.
Thank you very much, Stella. Sorry.
Yeah, Sika, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Stella. I'll start off this segment of the presentation, and Leah would take over. I'd like to say hello to everyone. I think the discussions have been very interesting so far. The speakers from the first segment seem to have validated a lot of the things we put in the manifesto, and it's exciting to see that this manifesto is becoming something very tangible. So moving on with the recommendations, the next key stakeholder that we think is very critical to increasing the participation of women in research is the private sector. And by private sector, we are referring to businesses and institutions that are owned by private individuals and entities. And the private sector is important because these are organizations that utilize research data in their work. They also engage researchers in different aspects of their operations. And many of these private sector institutions provide funds for research and scholarships to universities. So they are very important in advancing gender equality within the research space. Our recommendations to the private sector are therefore that they should direct more funding towards women-centered research, as well as women-led research, and also support organizations such as CSOs and NGOs that are focused on women's issues. We're also asking them to promote mentorship of female students and researchers through placements within their businesses to build their capacity. And I think this answers one of the questions that came up in the Q&A segment, where somebody was asking how without a master's she can learn. Through these placements, there's cross-learning, so you have researchers with advanced degrees coming into the private sector. They are learning from you, and you're also learning from them. Lastly, we are also asking the private sector to make a deliberate effort to ensure that women are represented in their leadership. And earlier on, Professor Lillian mentioned that leadership within a community sets the tone for their culture, their agenda, everything within that community. So we are asking that women are more represented in leadership in private sector. So that sets the tone for more targeted activities towards women in research, and also more women in their R&D positions. And I think that this can be done through private-public partnerships with universities, and also through providing training opportunities for women in research within the private sector. Now, moving on to the next stakeholder, we are looking at the civil society organizations. And we all know that CSOs, NGOs play a crucial role in advancing gender equality and women's rights. They contribute to scientific research, and they advocate for social change and policy reforms. Civil society organizations are knowledge and research-based, and this is very important. So that brings us into their agenda because they use a lot of research for their work. We are asking that they should advocate for and promote studies on women's issues, and also ensure women are represented as subjects of research. So we are saying that since these bodies are good at advocating for issues, they should advocate for more research about women. And we're also asking that this data that we collect in research should be disaggregated by gender. It shouldn't, if we are looking at livelihoods, we shouldn't just generalize it, but we should look at how gender comes to play when we are looking at livelihoods, as an example. We're also asking that civil society organizations partner with women researchers and include them in advisory roles to ensure that their voices and expertise are central to projects CSOs embark in. Finally, we are asking that they also fund women-led research initiatives and also advocate for increased financial support towards these initiatives. And we are also asking that they use the data from women-led research initiatives in their programs and projects. At this point, I'll hand over to Leah. Over to you, Leah.
Thank you very much, Sinka. Now we want to talk about the publisher. You know, when you want to do the good research, you have to publish in the good journal, to publish good paper, and that should be done in the good journal. That's why we have some recommendation for publisher. We want them to collect gender disaggregate data and ensure gender balance, to promote diversity during the publication. We encourage them also actively invite and encourage women, particularly women from marginalized regions, to submit articles in the journal. Lastly, we think it will be good to provide training for editor and reviewer on diversity regarding the gender bias to enhance fairness in the submission of the paper. Because when we want to do the research, we need more visibility. If we are doing the good publication, we will get that visibility. Another way for us to have that visibility is about how we can collaborate with media. The media can help us to show what we are doing. They can help us to put light on our research. That's why we have recommendation for them. Particularly, we want them to compile and publicize lists of female experts promoting their work through the media and celebrate the women during some particularly day, for instance, Women's Days or the Day of Women in STEM. We are recommending also to the media to establish supportive network and training program and actively promote the young researcher work. For instance, if someone is doing a quick PhD work, the media can help to show what that young woman is doing. Lastly, we would like that they provide, media training to women researchers in order to support them to show their work and also minimize the misconception. For us, we need the visibility as a researcher, as women. We need more light on what we are doing. And we are recommending the publisher to support us in our research, as well as the media people. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank to everyone. You take your time to listen to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Leah and Sika, for that presentation. It was quite clear, and I'm sure that the audience has also consumed the material carefully, and they're going to make some additions. I need to point out that in our case studies, Dr. Leah Pareto is one of the women who has been able to break the ceiling of balancing motherhood, marriage, and growth in the academia. and she has an interesting story to tell. Vibeke has shared the link on the chat on where you can find her story, and I'm encouraging Oluwato Biloba to make a point of reaching out to her and just find out how she has managed to create a balance on that. We also have someone else in the audience, Nelda Smith, who has also been able to break a part of that ceiling, and you may want to speak to them. The reason why I'm mentioning their names and highlighting them is because from the stories we have observed, the few who have been able to create that link or bridge that gap are few and far apart. And so it's important that we celebrate the few stories that are there and pick some of the tips or best practices that could be communicated to different people. So please reach out to them and try as much as possible and get the information they have so that it can build or enrich the experience of the conversation that you're having for mothers in academia in Nigeria. I opened the floor. I had seen one hand up. I don't know whether it was a hand that was left over from the previous groups, but those of you who want to make additional recommendations to the media and to the civil society, to the private sector, this is a good time for you to speak. I'm going to allow Charlene Mwangi first, and then Blessing Cleopa. Charlene, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Stella, and the presenters we just had. For me, my contribution is towards the private sector, maybe just to an addition to one of the points that you had mentioned. This is around open innovation, whereby more spaces can be created by private sector for co-creation together with women researchers. So often we find that the private sector has the funding, and some of these ideas are already being implemented by youth and women. So bringing these people together to co-create and have open innovation spaces, I feel would be very beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charlene, for that. Blessing, Cleopa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, ma'am. Mine is on the publishers. Recently, I tried pushing my paper to some publishers, especially the high-ranking journals, and I was able to stumble on information specifying a waiver of APC, that's processing fee for some scholars in some countries. And when I scrolled down, I discovered that there were omissions. To me, it's omission, but I don't know. For instance, there are some countries that were giving complete waiver of not paying the fee. Nigeria is not part of it. So many other African countries were there. So I began to imagine, how is it that Nigeria is not part of it with all the challenges in Nigeria? I expected that all the countries in Africa should be included. So it was a really big challenge for me because I couldn't afford it. Nigeria was on Group B that is supposed to pay half the money. I don't even have the money. So it's really a thing of concern. I want to use this medium to say that, please, the publishers should add all the African countries, 52 or 53 of them thereabouts, because we are really in a very big challenge of finance in terms of publishing our papers. Imagine writing a good paper and you can't publish, and they are telling you to pay hundreds of dollars. Where on earth can somebody get that? So the publishers should please help us, the women in particular. We don't have money to do this, and we need it to move. So I really need this platform to help us push for that. Thank you, ma'am.
Relevant. Thank you very much for that recommendation. I'm sure you had the people I'm with in the room saying that is so relevant. We are grateful that you've been able to make that recommendation. I am seeing all your feedback on the chat. I promise you we're saving the chat. And we are also going to provide this to the steering group so that they can be able to analyze some of the recommendations you have made. You have made recommendations about including more women so that a lot more women are engaged in research. There are some who have said that there are a lot of research and published studies. Women can be encouraged to use these theses to develop products from research, such as projects from recommendations. I saw someone talking about the use of social media to publish research, and we have also taken interest in that and are collaborating under the Together for Impact Partnership to train researchers on the use of social media to share the information about their research out there, just to make sure that whatever they're already doing is communicated effectively. And then, of course, I'm not going to read all of them, but we have seen your contribution, Edna Kangogo. We have seen your contribution, Sympathy Mandoloma. We have seen your contribution, Nelda, yes, your story must find its way onto the studies that are being done so that we are also telling the positive stories. And of course, we've seen recommendations from Hadiza, from Antoinette on some of the recommendations you're making, you know, in even addressing the systemic barriers and all that is affecting women in research. This is very valuable feedback, and we'll try and make sure that the recommendations get there. Thank you, Rita, for the recommendations for NGOs and CSOs, especially the ones on reproductive health. We truly, truly appreciate your feedback on the same. I'm going to now try and transition us to the next conversation, but first of all, I see her. Oh, I see two more hands. Let me give the first opportunity to Faith Mabiki because she hasn't spoken yet, and then I'm going to give you a chance, Sumaya. Faith Mabiki, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for including me in this good forum. I'm a Tanzanian from Sokoine University of Agriculture, and I think my suggestion can go together with the Rita Mukashiaka. My thinking is that at the level of being researchers, we are already dealing with the women already made at a family level. And as for me, my first ice I broke was about going to secondary school because I passed and my family was like, we don't send girls to school. And my parents stand firm so that I go to secondary school. And I remember taking care of my brother who is older than me. And you are told to clean the cloth and everything because you are trained since young what you should do as a lady, what you should do as a woman. So if I could have not gone through to secondary school, maybe I would not be in here. I'm a professor at Sokoine University of Agriculture. So I see women at a family level where they are already set a mind that you are not, you cannot speak, you are there to be told you should do this and this. And therefore, we use a lot of energy at this level to change the mindset. So I propose that, especially to the NGOs and CBOs, because I know they interact directly to the family, that the gender knowledge be strengthened at a family level. If the mothers will say, you as a boy and as a girl, you can do this together. You as a girl, you can compete. You as a girl, you can do this. Definitely, the girl will grow up like that, you know, will go up with that enthusiasm up here. So we find that we are dealing with girls now at this level, but we are already our set is already, our mind is already set. Sometimes you do and you fear, you say, I should not speak that much. I might not get married because that's what I'm told at home. Okay, so that was my suggestion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. We truly appreciate your feedback. I'm going to invite Sumaya Nakayovu to take the floor. Briefly tell us which group you're speaking to and the recommendation you're making.
Okay, so much. This is once again a quick one. I want to talk about publication. You know, sometimes, mostly for us young researchers, we might not be knowing where exactly should we go to in case we want to publish our writings. And you might find that there is a lot of research on women, but researchers are sitting on it because they do not know where exactly to go to. I suggest that in case researchers are given the various platforms, information on how to publish their writings, I think we can put a lot of research out there on women. And also to add on the other speaker that talked about the costs. Also the costs. Now I didn't know that I thought publication is for free. And also the cost bit of it is challenging. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Sumaya. I'm now going to invite the last speaker, Eunice Efua Atafua, to give her feedback.
Thank you very much to all the speakers and all the work that is going on to help women to also be heard in terms of research. My recommendation is to the media. I think it would be best if they have, let's say, a dedicated program that will discuss what women are doing in terms of research added to their weekly activities. That is the first one. Also, the second is they usually do advertisements when they are showing a movie or something. They could also inculcate a short clip of a research that has been undertaken by a woman on key issues in that particular country. I think that will also sell us out as women, and then it will also encourage other young researchers to come on board. The other one is to the private sector. We cannot do research if we don't know what is happening in a certain space. So I would also recommend that they open up their space for more women to come into their space so that they can actually learn what is going on there and then try to come up with something to research to help them to also improve. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Eunice. We appreciate your feedback. I already see there are even more recommendations coming in the chat. Evangelista is saying mentorship is really needed for young researchers. I see Vivek has shared a link for you to be able to figure out how to avoid the sticky floors. We did have quite some extensive conversation, and you may want to go and watch what is on that link. Adut Andrew is talking about inclusivity of persons with disability in the space and mentoring the upcoming young women. Definitely. Nasa Bira Kiwanuka is talking about the need to engage NGOs to use research more to inform policy work for NGOs and community development, such as the nexus between research and society improvement is fully harnessed. Alice Bamusime, our trainer on gender, I like your recommendation that research fellowships should be family inclusive because women are inseparable with their children. You will be pleased to know that as part of the team we have, as part of the team we had in the month of March, one of the researchers that we had in the room shared her story. She had to sacrifice and leave her, was it 2 weeks old child? While she was going for a fellowship, otherwise she was going to lose it to male colleagues. So definitely your recommendation on having family inclusive fellowships is definitely critical, and ensuring that we convince all actors who are providing fellowships to add that component to their fellowship programs. I think there are so many other recommendations that are coming. I cannot read all of them, but we've noted your addition, Makafui Adotsu, we've noted Sato Maiga, we've noted Rita Mukashiaka, we have noted your additions. And we definitely like the fact that all the recommendations are coming from different places and different countries in the region, which means everyone is represented in this room, and this is something we truly, truly appreciate. Do not stop adding recommendations on the chat room. There are opportunities to review all of this. So I suggest that you just write the specific person you're making the recommendation to and what you're adding, even as we continue with the conversation, to ensure that then whatever we provide to the steering group will be comprehensive and they'll be able to assess where to add your recommendations after this meeting. Thank you so much for trusting us with your feedback. Thank you so much for trusting us with your knowledge, and of course providing us an opportunity to be able to have this conversation and have it in a constructive way. I am feeling guilty about locking up Oluwato Biloba. yet that's the only hand left. So if you promise to be disciplined, I'm giving you 30 seconds to make your submission, and then we close so that we go to the next session. Thank you. Over to you, Oluwato Biloba.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I bet you already know that 30 seconds cannot do justice to what I would want to say. But first, I would like to say thank you to the speakers. It's been really refreshing being in this space. And everything that has been said, it's what I'm currently working on. I'm a Nigerian, but I'm a doctoral researcher in the UK, Lancaster University to be precise. And as I typed in the chat box, my studies is on the career trajectories and experiences of academic women who are mothers in Africa, particularly Nigeria. One thing I would quickly like to chime in is that from what I am seeing in my data, that is, I would like to recommend that first to women, the first thing is to get over this victim mentality. Yeah, it's we all know the situation of things, but we also need to recognize that it is because we have been inserted in a faulty space. So there is usually this fix the women approach that keeps reinforcing inequalities. So we need, that said, we need to really focus on the systems and government policies. So you would find women in other contexts, not that gender inequality has been abated across the world, but the situation is that we all understand the situation of gender norms and patriarchy in Africa. So my advice, my recommendation is that the system in terms of academia as a work organization should look much more than superficial approaches to really fix the system itself to really accommodate women, and also government policies should be intensified. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oluwato Biloba, and for trying to keep it short. I appreciate all of you for all your feedback, and I appreciate all of you for trusting us with the information that you have shared with us. I appreciate my team even more. To all the women researchers who have been a part of the steering committee, have been a part of the presentation, have shared the different components. I truly, truly appreciate you, Dr. Agatha Alidri. I appreciate you, Dr. Lanoy Malloy, and you know it. I appreciate you, Dr. Lizelle. Surely, thank you so much for also being a very close part of the steering committee and the planning of this. I appreciate you, Dr. Jenny Falcona. I appreciate you, Dr. Leah Paretoe. I appreciate you, Dr. Sika Abrokwa. All of you have contributed to making sure that the whole world now knows what we have been cooking for the last couple of months. And I hope you're proud of yourselves as you hear the feedback that is coming out of this conversation. You have had a resounding affirmation that what you managed to gather is exactly what is happening around, and that the team here is in support of what you have put together, of course, in addition to the recommendations that they have made. Thank you very, very much. When we started this conversation, we had 256, I think 260. Now we have 222. 222 is a divine number, so I'm not worried. Those who left have missed out on the most interesting part of this conversation. And that is the part where we conduct a survey and get your opinions about very targeted feedback onto the manifesto. My colleague, Kemi, who's also the technical arm of my brain and my work, is here to help us understand how we are going to engage in the survey. And then we will all participate in the survey just while you're in the group. Please make sure that you all participate so that we get as much feedback as possible. And then we are going to then close after this. Please don't be in a hurry to leave. You'll be glad that you stayed through the surveys and the survey and the closing, where we'll give you briefs on opportunities and other steps to this process that are available. Kemi, over to you.
Thank you, Stella, and may I add my voice to Stella's to just say thank you, everyone. Greetings. Thank you for spending your time here and for investing not just your time, but your minds, and making such significant contributions to this manifesto that means a lot to so many of the women that began this process, and you, the women who are joining it and just making it even richer in what we are trying to put forward. So I have a link that I am sharing in the chat box right now. And it's basically to allow us to collect even more of your thoughts and your contributions to the More Women in Research survey. Now, at that link, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I thought it would be great if we could also interact as we fill out the link. Do feel free. I mean, we'll have the link even later, but we thought it would be great to be able to still see your recommendations coming in live. Yes, live, should I say. So if you click that link, it will take you to a page. Just give me one moment. All right, it will take you to a page. It won't look exactly like mine, but it will have the same information that we are gathering your insights on the More Women in Research Manifesto to shape its final form. Your contributions are very, very valuable. And you'll just keep on the screen that you're probably looking at. After clicking that link, you'll see these questions coming up. I can see some of us already responding to them. So the first question is, what would you say is the biggest challenge that women in research face? And if I can just go through a couple of the responses that I see here, I see lack of enough knowledge, lack of funding, opportunities, inadequate resources. I see mentorship is really large. The larger the font, that means the more it's being cited, more and more people are saying that. So I see mentorship is coming up very, very strongly, which is something that has come up not just in this conversation today, but even in the first engagement we had in March, I believe, this year when we started the More Women in Research campaign. So I see patriarchal systems and no detailed timelines. I'm not going to be able to go through all of them, but please feel free to keep submitting them. We'd just like to see them live as you respond. All right, our next question is around what is your biggest takeaway so far from the manifesto? Feeling hopeful. I feel like that's a statement that's actually very powerful, even in its simplicity. Mentorship comes up again. Women should collaborate. I'm reminded of what Professor Njoki was saying about sisterhood. In being intentional to mentor, women can do better. Women can also make it. Women can lead. Collaboration is also coming up very strongly. That is beautiful. Please do keep on submitting those responses. And in our next part of the survey, we have this question on which of the following things do you feel is most important for the manifesto to address? Now, there's a couple of them there, and I see that so far, what's coming up at the very top is empowering female researchers for funding, which is actually really ringing true. When I think about the conversations that happened earlier in March, I was privileged to be in the room as women just like you were discussing having more women in research. I see mentorship and networking also coming up very strongly, which is beautiful because I think this kind of space is encouraging that. It's cross-generational. And so maybe perhaps your next mentor is in this precise room with us. Best practices, okay, I see gender sensitivity in research proposals and projects coming up in third place, and then best practices of successful women researchers. Let me go ahead to the next. Do you think the manifesto covers these themes adequately? I see we have some decent numbers, and feel free to be honest because this manifesto is yours. You know, it should reflect truly what your experiences are, what your hopes are, what your pains are. So please do keep on letting us know as honestly as possible how you feel about how this is, about how the manifesto is covering. I can see from the numbers that actually most of us are feeling very strongly, very positively about the manifesto so far. So it's very encouraging, very affirming for the team that has been working so hard for the past couple of months to bring all of these thoughts together. And our next question, which recommendation section do you feel requires more emphasis in the manifesto? All right, I see the first one. Okay, women in research. I see funders, government institutions, and publishers. It's interesting that women in research comes first because that means we are being brave and putting the spotlight on ourselves as well. So I think that also says something makes a very strong statement about, you know, being able to self-reflect on what our contribution is to our own spaces. So I think bravo to women for being able to do that. I think it's very brave. And then what additional recommendations do you have to ensure that this manifesto is more actionable and impactful. I'll go through a couple of them. As you know, we're continuing to collect everything you're saying, including what's in the comments. So I'll just pick out a few and read them. Make sure that this falls into the hands of all the stakeholders. That's very important. Following through with the implementation of the manifesto and staying on to the end, also very important. So it's not just it happened once and it ended. It's a continuous engagement following through on what we've put down. It is good as it is. It captures most of the concerns raised and recommendations are apt. Very affirming indeed, I'm sure, for the many women that are behind creating this manifesto and collecting this data. And then publish the manifesto on all social media platforms across the globe. Absolutely. We certainly believe in the power of just reaching out to a digital community. I mean, even you are such a testament to that, that 280 something of you have actually been in this Zoom today with us. I'll go ahead to what I believe is our last slide. How would you like to see the manifesto amplified? Yes, I want to take that as yes, we want to see it amplified. The manifesto should be implemented, provide more women with opportunities in research, as well as mentorship opportunities. I see press release, which is fantastic because we've been able also through this process to engage with quite a number of notable members of the press and media. Make country-based initiatives for women researchers, providing more funding for women in research and more workshops to reach women. All right, so that is the end of this particular, just my sharing, but feel free to keep on adding your thoughts to that same link. We'll share it again. I don't think everybody has had a chance just yet, but we'll share it again along with a WhatsApp group so that you can be able to join our official WhatsApp group for this collective, this community that we are building. And thank you once again for your time. I'll hand back over to Stella.
Thank you very much, Kemi. That soft and beautiful voice is the power behind the technology in this meeting. Both Kemi and Elena have been working so hard to make sure that all the technical parts of this thing go very well for this conversation. And I'm sure you've seen what your thoughts are and you've interacted with that material. We are also keeping that for the steering group so that they can also use it to prioritize the issues on in the manifesto rather. With that, we have come to the end of our conversation. We truly appreciate all of you for having joined the conversation. We truly appreciate all of you for having trusted with the information you provided. I sincerely appreciate all the speakers who managed to make it today, and they spoke quite powerfully on the topics of the day. The fact that the conversation has gone well is as a result of the proper premise that you set, even in the conversation that started off this conversation. I know I'm addressing some of them while they've already left the room, and I know that some of them are still in the room. We appreciate you and the time that you have invested this afternoon in chipping in or contributing towards the cause of having more women in research. Every single one of the 260 women that have made it to this conversation today, and even the 1,000 and something who registered, we appreciate the fact that you have come and become a part of this conversation. We are also speaking to all those who are going to be watching this conversation after this, because we are going to upload it on our social media platforms. That we appreciate all of you for coming to watch, and if there's anything that you'd want us to interact with as part of the development process of this manifesto, kindly include it in the chat, in the comment section of the platform where you're going to get access to it, and we will endeavor to ensure that we access that information and try and incorporate it the best way possible. My colleague Kemi and Elena are going to be looking out for your comments, and if there's something that needs to find its way there, we'll do our best to make sure that it gets there. The purpose and the mission of this virtual dialogue has been achieved because we wanted to get your buy-in, we wanted to get your voices in, we wanted to confirm if we truly got the ideas right, or if there's something we were missing in our conversation. And the affirmations that you've given us are truly a vote of confidence that we truly appreciate. I cannot end this conversation without thanking the steering committee for the work that they have done in making this meeting possible, in making the development of the manifesto possible, and even in leading the process of developing this. Special appreciation goes to Dr. Sylvia Namwase, who chaired the steering committee that worked on the manifesto, and we truly appreciate the product that came out of that process. Every single member of the steering committee, every day you made yourself present, every day you had to multitask to ensure that then your making this available today is something we truly appreciate. I want to appreciate Elena and for driving the process of convening and having all the steering committee members available at the time when they needed to make the development of the manifesto possible. I have very, very special appreciations for one woman, Vibeke Kwade from DFC, who has played quite a central role in making sure that everything in this is perfect. All the processes of running this conversation are coordinated, preparing everybody for these conversations. I cannot appreciate Vibeke enough for the contribution that she has made to making this conversation a success. She likes being in the background, but I can assure you, she's the power and fuel that was driving my conversation today, and I had announced to them that I'm tapping into her energy as the power to run this conversation. We appreciate you, Vibeke, and we appreciate everything that you have done to make this conversation possible. I have her in the room, so I'm only just announcing so that you can know that she played a huge role in making this happen. I also need to appreciate the two institutions that are part of the Together for Impact Partnership, the MS Training Center for Development Cooperation and the Danida Fellowship Center, who are also the sponsors of this program. We truly, truly appreciate your commitment and the leadership of these institutions, Dr. Anna Haule and Dr. Ula Nesbit Hatawia, for everything that you do to make sure that our work is smooth and our processes are moving smoothly in order to deliver the programs that we need to deliver to the communities we work with. In the words of our speakers, we must promote sisterhood, we must promote support for each other. Let us find opportunities to sigh and celebrate. Let us find opportunities to collaborate and work together. And also let the work and the interventions that we're engaging in be enhancements and not fast tracking, because we are saying the more women we engage in research, we also want to ensure that we are giving them quality at whatever level they come in. If you are not a degree holder and you're in this conversation, do not panic. We were hoping that this conversation would convince you to actually want to advance your education. If you already have a degree and you can already feel that the fire has been lit in you to get deeper into academia, please feel free to speak to the people that you have met in this room. Please feel free to have conversations with the relevant people that have assisted you to be able to meet in this conversation. As Kemi said, your mentor could be in this room so that you can be able to tap into the opportunities available for you to grow in your career. If you are interested in research and you've started doing research, just build your capacity in engaging in research. I personally started doing research after I had acquired my first degree, and I have been doing research since. It's just that the levels have transitioned. So there's nothing that is stopping you. Before I acquired my degree, I claim and insist on claiming that I was participating in research because I was supporting other researchers as an enumerator. There are levels to this thing. Any level you engage in is an opportunity for you to learn and for you to actually prepare yourself for the assignment. The question from, I don't want to pronounce her name wrongly. Was it Sukaya or Suyakas? About fellowships and scholarships. We have first of all brought you together, and we all normally get access to different information about scholarships, fellowship opportunities. And now that we have seen that there's a need for that in the group, we encourage you to share those opportunities on the WhatsApp group. The good thing is that once we bring you in a space, we have seen that naturally happening. So I trust that once you come together on the WhatsApp group, you will post as many of those fellowships on the group and try as much as possible to collaborate in some of them if you can. In the group that we created after the meeting that we had in March, we already had people who decided to collaborate in writing a book. And so the possibilities are limitless, and we encourage you to just share those opportunities. In terms of what opportunities can be offered by MSTCDC and by the Danida Fellowship Center, we encourage you to join us on 4th of November and on 7th of November. Actually on 6th of November. Why am I mentioning those two dates? The 4th of November is the date when we are going to be having the launch of the manifesto. And the 6th of November is the day when you're going to be having another debate concerning this topic. And so I'm hoping that in the conversation that we're going to be having on 4th, since we're going to be having people coming from the fellowship programs in Denmark, then you'll be able to hear from the horse's mouth exactly what is possible and what is not possible. For now, just make a point of being a part of the let me call it supply chain for now, of information coming from the program. And then maybe as time goes by, you'll even get more information. And when the announcements come out, you'll be able to share the information. If I have not mentioned you personally, and you played a critical role in pulling this together, I'm delaying my speech so that I remember someone if there's someone I have forgotten. Kindly note that we truly appreciate you and everything you did, whether it was just editing, whether it was the design, whether it was the packaging of information, whether you're the one who's making phone calls to remind people that they're not in the Zoom meeting. We truly, truly appreciate you. Whether you are the team that was sending the kind regards and reminding people about what to do, we appreciate all of you for all the work that you have done. We appreciate people like Catherine Mosi in absentia for helping in promoting this on our social media platforms, and Kemi also and Elena for promoting. Thank you all for making this possible, not for us, but for the women out there who need to break the ceilings and find some stable ground to step on the slippery floors. I trust you and the team to be able to work together to make that happen. For women in research, we commit to carry this message, as had been requested by someone in the chat, to the farthest place possible that this message can get, and to continue pushing the advocacy campaign for this to work. Why is the YouLead Summit important for this conversation? This year, the theme of the AU is education. And so the theme of the YouLead Summit is also education. For this reason, we are going to be launching this manifesto at a time when everyone else is going to be focusing on education, focusing on STEM and how we can get many more women in STEM. We're also going to be focusing on how to ensure that research forms a huge part of our education. In a space like that, the conversation has a tendency of shifting towards men. So the launch of this manifesto at that time will be extremely critical in reminding everyone in the room, and we'll be having a lot of stakeholders, that we need more women in research. And who better to collaborate with in making this happen than yourselves? Thank you so much for making yourself a vessel and a tool for this particular message to reach the world. You will be glad that you're associated with this program. With that, I'm your host, Stella Agara, closing this conversation for today. We are not out of conversation, we're not out of content, we're not out of interventions, we are only out of time. Thank you very much.
Dr. Caroline Mose, you're working with mentorship, networking, and policy influencing for women in research. In your experience, why is it important to emphasize mentorship, networking, and policy influencing for women in research in Africa, not only for themselves, but for the broader society?
For a long time, we've had different challenges, either challenges of development, challenges of health, education, etc. But we've always had external influence, external advice. This is your problem, this is the solution. And we have reached a place now where it is important and in fact imperative for us to have homegrown solutions to Africa's problems.
Yes.
And who is in the business of creating homegrown solutions if not African researchers?
Yes.
Specifically women researchers, because tend to focus on solutions to problems where it can actually make a difference.
Thank you very much. This is goodbye for now. We shall be sending the draft manifesto to all of you so that you can get a chance to read it, interact with it before the launch comes on 4th of November. We love you all and goodbye.